Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Kaliis Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
Later in the show, musical worlds collide at Colliderfest. We'll talk with Colliderfest curator Edo Mor about this weekend's festival at the Bombyx Center for the Arts and Equity in Florence. And we'll hear about the innovative business model Edo is using to bring more music from around the globe here to Western Mass. But first...
It's time for our weekly check-in with U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts and the ranking member of the Rules Committee, Congressman Jim McGovern, in a segment we like to call McGoverning with McGovern. You can always send in your questions and comments to the Fab413 at nepm.org or text them at 1-800-639-9120, and we'll get to a listener question in just a little bit. But I was somewhat tickled by the headline, at least, despite the fact that what the story contains from the Boston Globe today. Even by Washington standards, Wednesday was one weird day. And it has to do with Dianne Feinstein, after a long battle of an illness, returning to Capitol Hill. It has to do with George Santos, your colleague in the House of Representatives, and a fabulist, which is my new most fabulous favorite word, pleading not guilty to charges of fraud and money laundering. And then there was the off-the-rails, by some people's estimation, off-the-rails, CNN town hall meeting last night. Rapid fire before we get into more politics from our backyards, Congressman, on those three stories. First, with the return of Dianne Feinstein, is it time for her to go, as some members of your party have said, or is this a decision that should be left to her?
Well, I mean, she ultimately has to make the decision. My view is if you can't function and if you can't do your job, then you ought to think about stepping aside, having the governor appoint somebody temporarily until the next election, and in the case of Dianne Feinstein, look, she's had an incredible career. She's done some amazing things and things that are how you make a great legacy. And so, I think it's sad that she's doesn't seem to be able to function, but we'll see. I mean, she's back and we'll see how things go, but if she can't do her job, she ought to move aside.
Now, did you watch any of the CNN town hall debate from New Hampshire yesterday? And this, of course, coming off of the heels of the liable verdict in the E. Jean Carroll case earlier this week with the former president, who is on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I saw some of the clips on the news, and it's unhinged and just ridiculous, but at the same time scary. The idea that this man, who is a pathological liar, who is unhinged, is the front runner for the Republicans in the presidential election. It's just scary to think that this guy, who's caused so much damage to this country, has the possibility of not only being the Republican nominee but being the president of the United States. And so, yeah, I mean, on one hand, it was ridiculous. On the other hand, it was really scary to me.
And your colleague, George Santos, the so-called fabulous, the Republican congressman from New York, I'm assuming because you're in the same chamber that you've had to have at least some interaction with George Santos, and then yesterday pleading not guilty to a litany of fraud and money laundering charges in federal court, yet still plans to run again. Your take on Congressman Santos. I believe you were trying to name a bill after him yesterday on the House floor, from what I witnessed.
Well, I mean, the Republicans had a bill that was supposedly going after fraud and unemployment insurance, which is not a huge issue, but it would basically target a lot of people, low-income and middle-income people who relied on unemployment insurance during the pandemic. It was going to crack down on them, but it would have eliminated funding that investigated the fraud that exposed George Santos. So, look, he's a disgrace. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. And I can't believe that he would get reelected. I can't even believe, even by Republican standards, that they would reelect him as.
Uh-oh.
Hey, I don't know what happened. Did I get cut off?
I don't know what happened either. I'll just. What do you? I thought you hung up on me. I'm so mad about George Santos. Click.
I heard beep beep beep. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm sorry. Where were we?
Yeah, by Republican standards, even you were surprised.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe he would get the Republican nomination again, because even by Republican standards, this guy is, it's just horrific. And he's an embarrassment. And, I think he probably, needs to seek some sort of support services, because this is just not, normal by any measure of the word. So I don't even know what to say. But
are your Republican colleagues either publicly or privately decrying George Santos, especially now that even so early in his time here in the House, he's been charged with so many counts?
Yeah. Privately, they've been decrying him for quite some time, even well before this. I mean, but publicly, they all seem to back him, although I think Kevin McCarthy suggested that maybe they need to find somebody else to run for that seat. But the bottom line is they need him because he was their key vote on their default on America bill a couple of weeks ago. He was a key vote to give Kevin McCarthy the speakership. So, he's a reliable ally for them. And he's a great friend of the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. I mean, he sits with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and that gang during votes. And so, I mean, it's just really sad that somebody like him is in a position of power in the United States Congress. And again, yesterday was just another reminder of why he really shouldn't be here.
You mentioned what the Democrats have been calling the Default on America bill. It has to do with the raising of the debt ceiling. And one of our questions is from Tom Bassett, formerly of the company called Beat Fog Nozzle, which I think is the greatest band name in the Valley, perhaps, but now retired in Florence, wishing us all a good day and asking what your strategy is to get the debt ceiling raised before we go into full-blown default. And more specifically, how can voters of Massachusetts assist to influence the passage of the debt limit, and how likely is the workaround, the discharge petition process, to be a winning strategy?
Well, the discharge petition is kind of a long shot, but there are other procedural measures that we might employ to try to force a vote on the debt ceiling. My hope is that Kevin McCarthy will allow a debt ceiling bill to come to the floor, and we can have a debate and vote on it. And if we do, it will pass. Mitch McConnell has indicated that defaulting on our debt is unacceptable, but the Republicans in the House seem to think it's not a big deal. I mean, you heard Donald Trump last night say it's not a big deal, and that it's okay. It will only be a day-long thing, that people would that it wouldn't really disadvantage the markets very significantly. Well, it's just ridiculous. We came close to defaulting before, and it impacted our credit rating. So if you actually default, there are consequences. And again, this shouldn't even be the subject of a negotiation. I mean, when Donald Trump was president, he said, hey, look, this is sacred. We shouldn't play politics with that. He was asked about it last night at the town hall, and his response was, yeah, I was president, so it was different. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But the bottom line is, we should not be setting a precedent where this is a political football. And if you don't like the bills you've accumulated, then don't accumulate the bills. This is about paying our bills. That's all this is about, bills that we have accumulated. And I will also remind people that 25% of our debt, of our nation's debt, was accumulated under the Trump administration. So my Republican friends had nothing to say about the debt then. I mean, we raised the issue. That's one of the reasons why we fought against his tax cuts that added $2 trillion to the debt. But now all of a sudden, they want to use this as a tool not to revisit the tax cuts, not to look at the bloated military budget, but to cut programs like food programs and nutrition programs for poor people, to go after veterans' health benefits, to go after programs to help make sure people have affordable housing. I mean, it is immoral what they're trying to do. But I would just say that one of the things that people can do is, if you have friends and relatives in other states, call them and have them call their members of Congress and say, vote to increase the debt ceiling. Because we have to do that. I mean, we have to pay our bills. America pays its bills.
Another big issue that is happening today is Title 42 is ending. It's the order that allowed authorities to expel migrants at the U.S. borders, and it was part of the U.S. code that allowed the CDC director to issue it. It was ostensibly to keep the virus out of the country to the best of our ability, but it was used as a political tool in regards to immigration. According to the new rules now under the Biden administration that will take over today, people that will cross the border without papers will be banned from entering the U.S. for 5 years. They could face felony charges. It'll disqualify immigrants from protection if they don't request refugee status in another nation before coming to the southern border. It would not apply to unaccompanied children, but it sounds very similar to the Trump administration rule that was deemed illegal by a federal court. Yeah. Most Democrats oppose that under Trump. Do you oppose it now that it's been put forward by the Democratic Biden White House?
I do. I mean, I think our immigration laws are all screwed up, and we need to revamp them. And we've been saying this for years. And it has become politically impossible because the issue gets demagogued for people to come together and do what's right. We need to make it easier for people to come here legally. We need to uphold our asylum laws. I mean, if you have a well-founded fear of persecution and you're fleeing violence, if we send you back, you'll be killed. You ought to be able to get refuge here. And we need to have a policy that is, compassionate to children who are coming here as well. But look, the other thing is that, rather than just talking about immigration, every time appears to be a crisis, how about we try to have a discussion about why people are coming here? And the deal is some of our policies are contributing to the economic hardships and the civil unrest in a lot of countries in Latin America. So, let's lift the embargo on Cuba. Let's take them off our terrorist list.
I was in front of your office on last Friday where the Anti-Imperialist Action Committee were there protesting. I mean, I don't know if they're actually protesting you or the whole concept, but it had to do with Cuba and our policies towards them as well as Venezuela.
We need to revisit our sanctions in Venezuela. We need to try to influence governments like El Salvador, where you have an authoritarian leader who is, arresting people en masse. I mean, there's a reason why people are coming here. Look what's the situation in Haiti, and we need to figure out constructive ways to help, calm the violence in Haiti. But we don't talk about those things. And if you're not going to talk about those things and solve those things, then people will continue to amass at our border. People come here at great expense and at great risk to their lives and the lives of their family members, because they feel they have no other alternative. So, it's not that they have nothing to do this weekend, so let's go try to cross the border and come to the United States. It's because they're fleeing and they're leaving very difficult situations. So let us, as we get through these next few days, let us try to reflect on how we can influence the situation in Latin America so that we're not seeing conditions internally that force people to leave.
You had a visit at the Capitol this week from the kids from the Hartsbrook School in Hadley. We walk right by their school every year on the March for the Food Bank. What was the Hartsbrook School visit all about, and what were those kids most interested in learning about while they were in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, yeah. First of all, it was an incredible visit. These young people are brilliant, and they give me great hope for the future. And they had, really important questions about, a lot of things that were happening in the world, everything from climate change to immigration to social justice issues. And, and it's great to welcome young people to Washington. And my hope is when they come here that they feel like, this is something that they need to care about, not just now, but for the rest of their lives. And, I think some of our future leaders were probably in that class that came down and visited me. So it's a great school, great teachers, great students, and I really enjoyed our meeting.
You were also at Hampshire Pride this past Saturday, the first one live and in person since the pandemic began. What was your take and assessment on the return of that event that ended right near your downtown Northampton offices? Yeah,
it was magnificent. I had a great time. Lots of people showed up. And the crowd was enthusiastic. I talked to hundreds of people who were just so happy to be at Pride in person. And it was a perfect day. We had a lousy, rainy, chilly week, and then on that Saturday the sun came out. It was just beautiful. And I had one of the best times of the year there. And to all the organizers, congratulations on a job well done, and to all the thousands of people that showed up. I mean, it's just great to see everybody.
U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts and the chair of the Rules Committee, our weekly conversation, McGoverning with McGovern. You can send us a question at the fab413@nepm.org or text it at 1-800-639-9120. Talk to you again next week, Congressman. Thank you so much.
All the best. Be safe.
Don't hang up on me in the middle of the next conversation, though.
I don't think that was my fault. I don't know. Maybe.
Could be me. We've been having technical difficulties, so who knows?
All right. I'll talk to you next week.
Coming up, Afrobeat, rumba, merengue, joropo, Ethiopian groove, and a musical genre that we'll learn to pronounce that could be perfect for your Scrabble board. We'll talk with Edo Mor, the curator of this weekend's Colliderfest happening at Bombyx in Florence this weekend. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
The whole premise of Colliderfest is, can Americans listen to music the way they eat food?
I love that.
I love that too.
Because it's like we eat everything, right? It's like other countries you go and everyone eats one thing. But in the U.S. we eat Mexican food, Thai food, Ethiopian food, and we're very aware, and we cook it at home, and we have this beautiful culture around it that's due to all this immigrant culture in this country that comes in and feeds that. But the music it doesn't seem like it's as easy for people to get into hearing new things, tasting new things through their ears, but it's equally nourishing. And so, I'm kind of challenging that idea, seeing if we can get people around to listening to more new things.
This Friday and Saturday at Bombyx Center for Arts and Equity in Florence is Colliderfest 2, the 2nd edition, and joining us is the curator of the Collider, Edo Mor. What kind of musical food will we be experiencing this Friday and Saturday at Bombyx?
So we've got, on Friday, we have Amayo, who's formerly of Antibalas, playing music from Nigeria, Fela Kuti's music. Get ready to rumble! He came to this country when he was 17 on a soccer scholarship and wound up in this Afrobeat band that we know and love. He left the band this past year, and we're really excited to support his new project. He's always felt like the core of the band to me personally. And so he's headlining on Friday.
Is it got a similar sound to Antibalas and the Fela kind of Afrobeat feel?
Yeah. It's like a 9-piece ensemble.
There we go.
Heavy sound.
You can't get an Afrobeat band with like less than 8 people. I'm convinced.
You don't want one with fewer than 8 people.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and it's a lot of some of the original members from Antibalas are coming. Old school like Binky Griptide and. I don't know if Stu Bogey's coming. Maybe actually.
I think he's such a cool dude. I almost bought a guitar off of him once.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he played with when he's with the Daptones still, but was playing with Sharon Jones at Club Helsinki, and they just were milling about afterwards. I got to talking to him about guitars, and he's like, "Actually, I'm selling this Aria, and I have a weak spot for Japanese lawsuit guitars." And he sent me a picture. It was this gorgeous sunburst hollow body, like Jazz Master ripoff.
Nice.
And I had no money. So
cool to have his guitar, though.
I know, right? I kind of kicked myself. I really should have just figured it out.
Maybe he'll be playing it this Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be legit. Also on Friday, Sunken Cages and Dragon Child. That's like a duo that performs music really... based off their tradition from Ethiopia and India, and it's like this percussive, horn-driven thing. It's a bit like Pharoah Saunders meets Flying Lotus, with some Ethiopic thrown.
Nice.
And then on Saturday we've got Senia Rubinos, who is born in Hartford, the daughter of Puerto Rican and Cuban parents. Her music is like very hard to describe. It's like electronica, R&B, pop, funk, soul-driven, and it's really, I think all these musicians this year are coming out of this place that's really immigrant music, driven by the creative force of nostalgia.
French bistro, Dominican chef, Italian restaurant, Boricua chef, Chinese takeout, Mexican chef, new for America, but to the end of that is a French bistro, Dominican chef, Italian restaurant.
Really dig into their roots because they're here in America and they're missing something that is a part of them, and they find it in the music. And it's really the driving force, I think, for Zenio's latest release, which is called Una Rosa. As well as, same night on Saturday, we have Mafer Bandola coming. She is from Venezuela, and she's a member of La Dama, a group that I think y'all have met at Green River Festival.
Yep.
So she has finally moved to New York City permanently. You know, Venezuela is just a total mess, and there's a huge expat community of Venezuelans living in New York now. And one of the cool things she's done in the past year is she has created this portable community house for Venezuelan culture, specifically joropo, which is a kind of like it means party in Venezuela, and it's the traditional music there. It's very electric music. It's in 6/8. It's very fast and fun. It's a little like jarocho from Mexico. And so she's bringing that project up here. It's really a unique opportunity to hear joropo. You hardly hear it outside of Venezuela. This is like the benefit of being close enough to New York where we can bring these artists who are, even in New York City, are sort of in this tiny underground niche. Super cool.
We're speaking with Edo Mor, who is the curator of Colliderfest 2, which is happening this Friday and Saturday at Bombyx Center for Arts and Equity in Florence. There is another musical genre that's listed here that I don't know how to pronounce, gqom. How do you pronounce that musical genre?
Oh, God, this is embarrassing because I don't know how to say that either.
I'm going to try to use it for Scrabble because it does not have a capital letter at the front. So I think it's got to be allowable. But
is the G silent? There's no U after the Q.
Yeah,
where
I
are
love
you
it.
seeing
It's on the
that?
Bombyx website. Afrobeat, rumba, merengue,
Oh, man,
joropo, Ethiopian groove.
Gqom? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, that's the mystery. This is what's so cool, that you get to learn about these things that you maybe never have experienced before. Edo, tell us a little bit about your backstory, what got you into wanting to taste music from the United Nations buffet, for lack of another better way to describe it.
It started about 5 years ago. I mean, I've been listening to this stuff all my life. I'm Israeli. I'm married to an Argentinian. We speak Spanish at home. I listen to music from everywhere, and I remember as a kid I would go to the library and come home with like 20 CDs, just from like rifling through, hearing, kind of omnivorously listening to things. But 5 years ago, Trump was doing horrible things in this country. Can I say that?
You said it.
And it was just, I felt like in my own I was working in my glass studio, not interacting with anyone. I just felt like I had to do something that felt like it was positive and moved this country forward in a way that helped us to accept each other as opposed to hating each other. So that's kind of where I started.
And as you mentioned, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, my parents aside maybe, and maybe people of a certain generation, are willing to experiment with foods. And it really is an amazing avenue to start to know a culture.
It is the easiest way to go about doing it, I would say.
And music is probably the second easiest way, but both of them are super important. But food is also going to be a part of this festival, including our guest from Friday on the show when we did our Mezcal Thunderdome. Tell us about some of the food that will be there at Bombyx.
Oh, so we're super psyched and fortunate to have Neftali Duran back making his Oaxacan-inspired tacos. He is bringing, the same as these artists, these musicians, he's bringing his own love for his home place that he holds in his heart, even though he lives here. The food of Oaxaca, the food that his mom taught him to cook. He's bringing all that, and he's making it for us both Friday, Saturday from 6 to 9 p.m. so you can take a break from the music and grab a bite to eat. There's also beer and cider that's made locally in Florence from Artifact and Building 8. And, I mean, there's so much going on, which is, I think the cool thing about Bombyx as a space is there's a lot of different rooms and areas where you can have things happen. So there's the food, there's the drinks, there's going to be a record fair We're going to have all kinds of workshops on Saturday.
Is the record fair going to also favor more world? There's no
Global, international, world has
yeah.
fallen out of
There's
favor
such
with
a well.
music
It's just
in
sort
those
of like
descriptors.
it's a terrible term
Yeah.
for what encompasses everything that's not here.
Yeah.
Like we have all of this language and nothing to properly describe the music that you find outside of the States. So I can call it international music, but that's so broad and doesn't actually encompass what we actually mean. And calling it global music is also kind of a cop-out. Like it's like there's so much more to it. There's so much more nuance to it than to just call it that. Anyhow, that's my soapbox, and I'm done now.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing about it is we are like self-observing that we're lacking the terminology and the understanding, and we're digging deeper as we're talking about it, right?
Agreed.
And I think the record fair is going to have, Studebaker Hawk always brings
Oh, yeah.
just like an insane amount of records from all over
the place.
And it's run by Spin That Records from Springfield. Giovanni is bringing all his records, and there's probably about 20 other dealers. So I'm sure there'll be all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
to pick
And
up.
that's Saturday?
Saturday from 12 to 5, and that part is totally free. You don't need to buy tickets. You can just show up.
But if you want to go to the show, and we should mention that you're an underwriter, which we very much appreciate, but that's not why we're talking to you.
No. We're
love
talking
and
to you
support
because
this kind of music.
the people that you're bringing are entirely awesome. I haven't seen either of the Barr brothers in ages. The one state's representative on your lineup. But yeah, the lineup is so good.
Yeah, right. Brad Barr from The Slip and the Barr Brothers is opening the festival. And year one, we opened with Garth Stevenson, and it's really nice to open with just a solo performer and a kind of a more listening set, which is what we have on Friday. It's 7 p.m.
But tickets are more affordable if you act now, before the day of the show, right?
Correct, yeah. It's always more expensive at the door.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true across the board. Buy your tickets in advance.
Concert going has been feeling the pains since the pandemic has hit. Things aren't the same as they were in 2019. People might have been more willing to experiment with music they hadn't heard of before. So if you have any inkling in your heart to be curious about music, this is a wonderful opportunity for you this Friday and Saturday. And putting on shows like this isn't easy, especially if you don't know how many people are going to show up, right?
Oh, yeah. It's been really difficult since the pandemic, especially for something like this. It's a discovery-based festival. If you don't know anyone on the lineup, that's probably fine. Most of the people don't either. That's the whole point of Colliderfest, is to introduce you to new music.
It's one of the reasons why I go to big years, because like each year I know maybe 5 or 6 people like that I've been following for ages, but like the amount of people where I'm just walking into a church and oh my gosh, who's this dude on harp like this? And the things that you can find in places like that, like those experiences are really, really worthwhile and important chances to take.
And if you like to dance and like tacos, that is reason enough to go right
Yeah,
there.
we had a chance to do it in our own backyard. I don't have to go to Tennessee for it.
Yeah, right.
That's right, yeah. And Big Ears is a total inspiration for Colliderfest. Amazing festival in Knoxville. Another cool thing to say about Bombyx, recently they managed to put all the pews that are in the main music hall, they managed to put these casters on them so they can actually roll a bunch of them out. And
Nice.
create
We can
more
have a dance floor.
More dance. I love it. I was at Colliderfest last year, and it was lit, as the kids say. It was on fire. It was really fun, as I would say in my
How
own
much
vernacular.
other old man terminology are you going to throw out right now?
As much as you need.
I don't need any more. I'm just wondering how much I'm going to get
I think you
unwarranted.
guys slay, right?
Yeah, they slay. Yeah, the festival last year was Mother. That's the new one that my son says all the time.
So I looked up how to pronounce that musical genre that was tricky for us, and it's actually igqom. It's a genre of electronic dance music that popped up in the early 2010s from Durban, South Africa, and it's sometimes spelled igqom in order to simulate the clicks that the Zulu name naturally has in the genre.
Our engineer, Betsy Cordes, says we can't use that word in Scrabble because it is not in the official Scrabble dictionary, but we know the dictionary. Not only does Peter Sokolowski work here at NEPM, but we regularly talk to Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, which is the official Scrabble dictionary. So we're going to get that added. That's
our new campaign.
2023 goals. Coming up, more with Edo Mor about the business model that he borrowed from jazz and from farmers. That's going to be bringing more music from around the globe to our backyards here in Western Mass. Edo Mor, who is the curator of lots of incredible concerts that happen up and down the valley and in the 4 counties of Western Massachusetts,
is the curator for Colliderfest. You, Edo, came up with, or at least borrowed, an interesting concept when it comes to trying to encourage people to get out to shows. We were talking about how the pandemic really made people stay indoors. I don't know if it was the fear of the virus or just inertia that they were not able to overcome when they got used to staying at home. People haven't been coming out in the same ways as they have to shows. You borrowed a local concept and have transferred it to a new business model to try to encourage people to come out to shows. Tell us what you've done with your CSA for music.
Yeah, so there's someone in the Valley who many of us know and love already, Glenn Siegel and his wife Priscilla, who have created this program already. It's called Jazz Shares, but it's just for jazz. And it's been running for 10 years, and it's essentially a season pass, or you buy a bunch of tickets, and then you can use them throughout the season to go to shows that Glenn has curated, and you trust Glenn. So you go, and it becomes more than just going to a concert. It becomes a community space as well, because you see the other members again and again, and you're accumulating these experiences together. And I thought that was a great idea, and I thought that it would work really well for the kind of music that I've been trying to bring to Western Mass for the past several years, for several reasons. The first of which is it's just really expensive to bring artists from other countries here. The U.S. has prohibitive visa requirements. It can cost a single individual upwards of $2,000 to $3,000 to come play in the U.S. So if you have a band of 5 people, that adds up really fast.
And that's just for visas. That's not for travel.
Yeah,
that's not for hotel,
travels.
for food,
that's
for
not
anything.
for anything else outside of the tour except for getting in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're really kind of shooting ourselves in the foot with this because we're limiting our ability to connect with the rest of the world, to experience these cross-cultural moments, and to have these sort of ambassadors visit us with their sounds. So all that said, when you're communicating with an artist in a different country, if you can get them a guarantee of like $2,000 for the concert as opposed to what is very typical these days, which is like a door deal. You know, you'll get 70% of the ticket sales. Mm. You know, they can't come here and apply for visas with door deals. So if we here locally can offer them a guarantee, and around the country you have other presenters like us who are able to do the same thing. Usually that's performing arts centers and festivals, but the more kind of local curators like myself who can give a guarantee, the more likely it is that an artist from Burkina Faso or something can come play here. So that's why the model makes so much sense. You need the money up front to give these artists the commitment so that they can plan their tour, which happens, 6 months ahead of the show. And so if you're counting on last-minute ticket sales, a lot of good opportunities to bring cool artists here just won't happen. So it's really a perfect model for this.
And that's why you've called it a CSA for music, and that's why Glenn Siegel's Jazz Shares is the same thing. It's based on, kind of on the farm share model. And we talked to so many farmers here who want you to sign up for a share early in the season. It guarantees them a certain amount of flexibility with cash so that they can get into planting season. If something terrible happens weather-wise, you've still decided that you believe in this farm and this concept and want to support it. And this is the similar model here. It makes it so that there's a little bit of a cushion as opposed to just sheer risk every time you want to do something like this.
Mm-hmm. That's right. There's cushion. And then there's also the farmer or the presenter can experiment more. And I think that the farm shares are a reason why we eat more different kinds of vegetables today than we used to, right? Because, they snuck some kale into the box and you tried kale out and then everyone loves kale now.
Right.
And I think that it could happen that way with music, too. There's all kinds of great stuff that in Europe, you have 10 to 20 times as much arts funding in most European countries.
They also have governments that have state arts programs that encourage that sort of community to foster. But that's neither here nor there, I say.
Well, I mean, it's here or there because if the government won't do it, then we, the people, I suppose,
have to
do it if it's something that we believe in. And this is an opportunity to do that. You launched this a couple months ago. And how was it? How did people respond when you launched this community-sponsored music program for Western Mass when it comes to borderless underground live concerts?
That's a great way to describe it.
It's the headline right there. I
know,
love it.
but it's also wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Borderless is good. We live in a borderless world now. In some ways, right? Otherwise, we don't. And I think that music is one way in which we can have that experience. So when I presented it, I wasn't sure how it would go, but we set up a crowdfund, and It was funded. We had $10,000 goal to do 7 or 8 concerts in the season, which I think is going to pay for most of that. And then obviously there'll be more ticket sales. And we're at 150% now.
Wow, great.
The crowdfund goes until the middle of the month. I think we may even have to cap membership because some of the venues that I've chosen are kind of small, and I want to make sure all the members can come.
And that's how it works. If you buy tickets in advance, you can go to all the shows, or there's different levels that people can get involved in?
There's different numbers of tickets, and then
you kind of pick how deep you want to go, but you can get 6 tickets or 12 tickets. And the tickets are actually going to be these physical wooden tokens that are beautifully engraved. You'll get them in the mail. They have a little QR code on the back, and you scan it, and it says what the next show is. Right away, that pops up. And they're also good for next season if you don't see anything you like this time around.
So it rolls over, and that's pretty cool, too.
What are some of the concerts and some of the venues you're working at with this new program? Edo Mor, who's curating and creating this CSA for music in Western Mass.
Well, the goal is always to have the energy in the room feel fantastic. Kaliis, knows a musician. And so, I can really figure out which venue works best for the artist, make sure there's enough dance room. And so we're going to be at the Williamsburg Grange Hall for our launch party with Quitapenas from Los Angeles. They're like a tropical dance band. We've got actually a secret show that only members can come to, and I won't say any more about it. I'm just going to leave
it. It wouldn't be a secret anymore if you did.
Go get a membership if you want to find out.
That's right. That's over the summer. And then our season starts with El Kat from Yemen and Israel. They play like Yemenite street funk with these trash-built instruments. They're playing at the Parlor Room.
Amazing.
It's going to be awesome.
That's really cool.
We got from Soweto, South Africa, Bantu Continua Uhuru Consciousness, this 7-piece ensemble. They play this trance-driven Afro-psychedelic anti-pop music that will get you into a really nice groove.
They're real fun. Real fun.
And also we got La Perla coming to City Space, to the Blue Room in East Hampton. La Perla is a trio of women from Colombia. Their music is really driven by social protest, bullerengue, cumbia, and sort of future folk.
Tell me it's not happening in the summer. That's my only question.
Those 3 shows I listed, those are like October, November.
Perfect. I remember being in the Blue Room when it was still the Flywheel and watching shows in the summer and having several people stop their set short going I can't. It's too much. It's too hot.
Right.
That's just the kind of music that Edo curates. It's too hot for the room. Edo Mor, if people want to get involved in this CSA for music, tell us how people can get involved before you put the cap on the number of members for this first season.
Yeah, so you could go to secretplanet.live. That's the website, and there's a link to the crowdfund at the top. You can read more about it. You can start to see what some of the artists are coming, and you can join. It's pretty easy. Since
you've started promoting and curating like this, have you gotten suggestions from folks who've been at the festivals or the shows that you've thrown of more venues to look into for more people to bring? Do people give you suggestions often?
It's I want to.
It's you should check out. Have you heard these people? You should check them out. Maybe they might fit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
is it welcome or unwelcome?
Oh no, it's I mean, I wish I had more time in the day to listen, and sometimes it's also about having the attention span. But sure, I mean, I feel like in the curator seat, I got to listen to everything and see what I think might work for people.
The second best way to show somebody that you like them is to share your music with them. Just saying.
Second best.
The first best is food.
Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah, I agree. I really love food, too. I think that's where the metaphor comes over. I like to cook a lot of Israeli food, which is mostly Arabic food.
If you find someone to come to town and make Ethiopian food, I don't know if there is a gauge for how happy I will be.
For this Colliderfest, we were trying to bring an Ethiopian chef for the week. And it's complicated.
It's complicated.
We're going to make it happen. Bombyx is great because there's a kitchen and you could get people in for cooking lessons.
That would be cool, too.
We really need an Ethiopian restaurant.
Tell me about it. We barely have African restaurants of any region, but that's another topic for another time.
That's right.
Edo Mor, who is the curator of Colliderfest 2, which is happening this Friday and Saturday at Bombyx Center for Arts and Equity in Florence. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks for supporting live music.
Thanks for bringing more interesting music to our area, because that's super important too. It's nice to hear the music that doesn't sound like you.
That's right. That's how we help to become each other.
In conjunction with Colliderfest, this Saturday, May 13th, all day down the street from Bombyx in Florence at the Arts and Industry Building is a thing called Spring Thing, an interactive addition to Fall Open Studios in the Arts and Industry Building.
They are organizing a scavenger hunt for the public to get to know the building and the people in it from a new vantage point. A few artists in the building have committed to creating a miniature art piece that they will hide for participants. There will be clues and instructions throughout the building for those who want to play the game. This sounds awesome.
It does sound awesome. It's a perfect extra thing to do besides the record fair at Colliderfest, which is free and open to the public. I mean, you have to buy the records.
Yeah, and assuming you're not like me and just like the super hyper-focused crate digger who doesn't really look up from anything.
I get into that mode as well.
Yeah, I get real into it. Coming up, a very thoughtful response to yesterday's conversation about Smith College social work and some ideas about what's happening in the next few days on what we're calling the plywood ramp to the weekend. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Kaliis Smith.
Coming up in just a couple minutes, we'll talk about a new segment that we will do occasionally called the Plywood Ramp to the Weekend, and we'll explain what that means and who it came from at that time. But yesterday on the show, you may have been listening, and we had our regular Wednesday feature with word nerd Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, who's going to help us get igqom in the dictionary, maybe, along with Peter Sokolowski, so that we can play it in Scrabble.
And maybe help us get the actual click in there between the G and the Q, because it's important.
It is important, and I'll keep trying. But our conversation yesterday was about Smith College's School of Social Work and Office deciding to no longer use the word field. And I got a great comment from my friend and Kung Fu training partner, Alice Barber from East Hampton. When Alice and I train in Kung Fu together, we refer to ourselves as Malice, Monty and Alice. Alice says, I just listened to the field part of yesterday's broadcast. Haven't gotten to veto yet. She's from East Hampton, after all. And wanted to mention something that is not getting nearly the attention as the word itself. I'll use my grad therapy students as an example. My students do a total of 750 hours of, quote, field work over 3 semesters. I'd estimate that 99% of this work is unpaid labor. The agencies for which they work can bill insurance companies and make money for the therapy, but the students are not compensated for their work. Often with the most marginalized communities among us, many trauma survivors, suicidal, etc. So the students then need to take out more student loans just to live and eat, compounding interest for a profession that doesn't pay enough to pay them back. Because between the, quote, field work and demand of classes, time for another job is limited and the pressure is overwhelming. Student loans have horrendously high interest rates, and students are not allowed to file for bankruptcy like corporations can or holders of credit cards. So many of us are quite shackled, intentional use of that word, to our educational experience. So to call it field work may actually be accurate to what it is, unpaid labor. For what it's worth, in my program at Springfield College, the early work is called practicum. The later work is called internship. Some places are working to change this and actually pay interns, so there's definitely a movement to do it differently. And to be clear, Alice continues, I'm in favor of the name change and think that it needs to happen alongside looking at all the other issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. And so a knee-jerk reaction to just saying, what? You don't want to say fieldwork anymore, when you hear it put in context like that, yeah, I don't think it's such a bad idea.
Or perhaps it's just removing it from, like, the actuality of what that work looks like.
Yeah.
To distance yourself from what's happening.
Right. Well, hopefully the actual changes happen, not just the changes in language.
Also pay your intern.
Because you're an intern. Unpaid.
Yeah, pay your interns. When you can. Get paid for the work that you do.
Seriously.
Is a settled law in the court of Judge John Hodgman, shameless plug, I'm on this week's episode of the Judge John Hodgman podcast, a summertime fun time guest bailiff.
Throwing out all of the
Monte
things.
Belmonte. Well, he shamelessly plugged our show, so I think that's
fair enough.
It's very
Yeah, no,
fair.
we
It's
appreciate
It's
that.
a great and fun podcast to be a part of. Another big story that we will continue to follow and that you've been probably hearing from the NEPM news department comes from the Amherst Regional High School newspaper called The Graphic.
And frankly, just like kudos to those student reporters for putting this article out. It was a collaborative effort, but like just the quality of work in their reporting is enough to make you go out and read it.
And I hope that you will. The headline says it's life or death. Failure to protect trans kids at Amherst Regional Middle School, a systemic problem. The article goes on to talk about two of the guidance counselors that may have been using their born-again evangelical Christian ideology to discourage kids who identify as trans or LGBTQ. Now, there is an article in Mass Live today saying that this is false, that they did talk to two of the guidance counselors there. We've been in touch with the newspaper and sort of through their advisor with the kids. For obvious reasons, they don't want to come on the show yet, but we're hoping that sometime soon we'll be able to talk to them because, A, really brave and important to try to stand up for your fellow students. B, it seems like it's extremely well done journalistically as well. And we had heard about this story a few weeks ago, couldn't get anybody to go on the record, but these kids did the digging in their own community and have put this excellent piece in what's called The Graphic together. So we hope to have them on sometime soon.
And for people out there who are generally not believing what the kids are saying about their counselors, I would suggest that you go out and see the piece Mother Tongue, done by previous guests of the show, the performance group, which includes a segment on stage of things that teachers have said to that group of students that they enact, and it is harrowing. So...
And that brings us to the plywood ramp to the weekend, which is Thursdays. Thursdays are like a plywood ramp to the weekend, where it's not quite the weekend, but you need a little bit of boost to get that next step to the weekend. Throw down a plywood ramp.
And maybe you don't know what your plans are, and we can help you with that.
And to the best of our knowledge, I got this through my friend Kelsey Flynn, who says she got it from a man named Jeff Hobbs in Hatfield, who coined this term. But if you were looking for something to do this weekend and you wanted to see the Performance Project and First Gen's Mother Tongue, it is Saturday at 6 p.m. at the United Congregational Church of Holyoke. If you were a listener to the show a long time, for a while, we haven't even been on a long time, they were here in the studio. They were performing a spoken word piece from the project. It's powerful. I've seen it at the Shea a couple of weeks ago, and it's just one of the many things that you could do this weekend.
Including Colliderfest, which we did talk about. Lee Fields is at the Drake in Amherst, so there's lots of music for you to see all over the place.
Pioneer Valley Symphony doing Mozart's Mass in C minor.
Indeed.
Hartford Symphony doing Mendelssohn's Taking Flight.
Nero doing their piece at the Shea.
That's correct, but I didn't want to shamelessly plug it as I'm the president of the board there, but I'm unpaid.
They were on the show earlier.
That's true.
We're plugging previous guests.
Yeah, so we're want to give you a quick rundown when we can about the fun things that are happening.
There's a plant sale happening at the Berkshire Botanical Garden.
Yeah, I think I may be getting some. Oh no, I better not say that out loud because Mother's Day is coming up.
Yeah, I mean, does your wife?
My wife
listen to the
doesn't
show?
listen to the show, so it's totally fine.
And now I'm like, oh no, can she hear us?
Tomorrow in the fabulous 413.
Segues.
Yeah, well, thank you for the plywood wearing. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, though. If you want to know what to do, apart from us getting to this segment or not, Culture to Do. You can sign up for the Culture to Do email that comes out through New England Public Media. Just go to nepm.org. Tomorrow in the fabulous 413 for Live Music Friday, we'll take you to a rehearsal of the Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra.
And a musical bonus with UMass professor Felipe Sales, who has a new album that tackles the issue of immigration sonically.
And for our own plywood ramp to the weekend, we'll head back into the wine bunker deep below State Street Fruit Store, Deli Wines and Spirits, the birthplace of our wine Thunderdome.
Our director is Tony. I drown my sorrows in mall Chinese done.
Our engineer is Betsy. 49 minutes and 28 seconds, Cordis.
30 seconds. Our technical team is Bart, insert quote here, Rankin.
Kara, I need a raise. No, I just need a vacation, Foster.
And Merry Christmas, Santa Dubé.
Musical thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, the Jay Giles Band.
Amayo, Sunken Cages, and Dragon Child, Pajarillo, Tejeda, Xenia Rubinos.
Quita Penas, El Cat, Bantu Continua Uhuru Consciousness, And La Perla.
I'm Kaliis Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.